With the hundreds of plugin options out on the market today, it's really difficult to know which plugins we actually need. To a beginner, it can be really confusing scrolling through the list of options and trying to figure out what they actually need to get the job done. And to make matters worse, when we're struggling to get our mix to sound the way that we want it to, the tendency is to add more and more and more plugins to fix all these issues that keep popping up. So how do we solve this problem? How do we know which tools we actually need and what to do when those tools just don't seem to be enough? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So let's start by talking about the tools we definitely need. Now, just kind of as a side note, all of these plugins that I'm going to mention, they don't have to be from a specific brand or manufacturer. There's a lot of different manufacturers out there that make a lot of different versions of these plugins, and probably any of them are going to work just fine. So don't worry so much about that. Just worry about the category that I'm going to kind of give you here. And then you can just kind of decide where to go based on what you have available. So the first plugin that you are absolutely going to need is a high pass filter. A high pass filter is used to roll off a lot of the low end in a track. So if I have a vocal mic, a lot of times it's going to have a lot of sonic information, below 200 hertz that we don't really need in a vocal mic. And so a high pass filter is used to kind of roll that off, free up that sonic space for the bass guitar or the kick drum or something that actually needs to use that space. So we use high pass filters all the time to help clean up a lot of that low end buildup that needs to be used by other instruments. The second thing that we're going to need is an EQ plugin. Now, thankfully, most EQs actually have a high pass filter built into them. So you can kind of combine number one and number two on this list together if you have an EQ that has a high pass filter. An EQ is used to modify the tone of a specific sound source. So again, if I have a vocal that has a really harsh frequency and the high mids, I can use an EQ to turn up or down a specific group of frequencies and help that tone fit better in the mix. So that's what we use an EQ for. The third plugin that you are absolutely going to need is a compressor. We use compressors to modify and adjust the dynamic range of a source. If you have a source that's really quiet in some places of the song and then really loud in other places, this is where we would use a compressor to help control that dynamic range to help it fit better in the mix. Now, the fourth thing on this list is one of those things that you may or may not need depending on your situation, but if it turns out that you do need it, you really want to have it with you. And this is a gate. Okay, so what a gate does is think about a live drum kit. If you've got an instrument where all of these different pieces of the instrument are mic'd, then let's just take a snare drum, for example. If you've got the snare drum mic'd, then you've got cymbal bleed coming into that, bleed from the toms, the kick, all of these other sources are actually bleeding into this snare mic. So when we get to the console, we're hearing the snare that's pretty loud and present, and then in the background we have all these other pieces of the drum kit. Well, a gate is used to kind of set a threshold to say that only the loudest source is going to be let in, and then it's going to cut all the other noise out. That's what we use a gate for. A lot of times it's pretty much used on drums, but it can be used on vocal mics or anything else that is picking up bleed from other sources on the stage. So like I said at the beginning of this, you may not need it depending on your situation, but if you are in a situation where you do end up needing it, you're really going to want to have access to a gate as well. Now, these last two plugins that you're going to need are not really used to modify the source itself. They're used as effects. And I'm talking about reverb and delay. Both of these effects are used to kind of help put the finishing touches on a source to kind of bring it to life. It adds a sense of space and just depth to your sound source. And we use reverb and delay in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of techniques with that, but you're going to definitely want to have a reverb and a delay of some kind in your setup. So those are the essential 6 plugins that you're going to need. You're going to need them pretty much every mix that you make, and you're going to rely heavily on those 6 plugins. But what happens when we have used all of these different foundational plugins and we're still having specific problems in our mix? What do we do at that point? Well, this is when you would start looking for other plugins or other techniques to deal with those specific problems. See, the purpose of this video isn't to tell you that you're only going to ever need 6 plugins. There's a reason plugin manufacturers make so many different flavors of the same categories of plugins. And it's because each plugin does different things in slightly different ways. The problem is, as mixers, when we start to use unnecessary plugins to compensate for our lack of understanding or skill in the art of mixing, that's when we start to get into trouble. So the point of this video is to kind of show you the basic ones you are absolutely going to need in pretty much every single mix you do. Beyond that, you're open to go look for some other options and solutions. So here's the bottom line. About 90% of the way there with this basic 6 that I just told you about, you'll be in good shape. For the remaining 10%, feel free to go look for other tools to kind of help you with specific issues. But don't feel like you have to have a big suite of plugins in order to be good at mixing. Instead, focus your energy and your time on learning how to mix really well with those foundational plugins, and then you'll be in pretty good shape. And speaking of the basics, if you're new to this channel and you're trying to learn the basics of mixing audio, I have a free gift for you on my website called the 7-Step Mix. And this guide will actually walk you through the 7 steps that I take in every single mix. And it'll give you a great systematic, consistent process to follow to get you some good results in your own mixes. So if that sounds like it'd be helpful for you, you can download it completely for free on my website, themixingprocess.com. And if you have any questions for me, like always, you can leave them in the comments below, or you can actually contact me directly from my website. I love to have a conversation with you and help you through any of these challenges that you might be having in your mixing journey. So until I hear from you, go be great at what you do. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time.